So I was having a conversation today about this idea of success and what does it mean and how do we create it for ourselves and where do we get the ideas of success from? And I think it's really interesting because we often talk about what success means to us on this podcast. We talk about what success looks like and feels like. Very rarely do we really address why we feel like that's success in the first place. What are the perceptions that we are putting out into the world? So, my name is Amber Fuhriman. This is the More Than Corporate podcast. I'm live streaming this episode to my Facebook group as well as to my Facebook page. So, if you guys want to be able to jump on and interact, then you can head to Facebook and look up Success Center and join the amazing community of people that we have there.
Welcome to the More Than Corporate podcast. I'm Amber Fuhriman, recovering perfectionist and serial accomplisher. If you're anything like I used to be, you've been living your life thinking that if you accomplish enough stuff, you'll finally find the success you've always wanted. But what if it's not about accomplishing more stuff? What if it's about accomplishing the right stuff? I believe you don't find success, you create it by intentionally designing the life you want and having the courage to get out of your comfort zone to live your design. I went from doing what I was supposed to do to doing what I love to do, and now I get to help others do the same. Keep listening as I chat with inspiring people who make it their mission to live their best life every day and learn how you too can live the life you've always wanted.
Let's jump into this idea of success. So if you're listening, I'd love to know where you're listening from and feel free to jump in on the comments and let me know what your thoughts are. So this all popped up because of a conversation that I was having on a recent podcast episode related to money. And we were talking specifically about the way that we sometimes look at other people and we think they have it all together. Relationships and money and, communication and whatever else it might be. We look at how satisfied we are in those areas, and then we can get a full picture of where our life's at. So looking at that life wheel, taking that life wheel as an example, when we think I'm only a 5 in the world of health because this is what a 10 would look like to me. Why do we think that? What has happened in our life that has caused us to believe that that's success? So in addition to defining success and knowing really what it is that success means to us, I think along with that comes this idea of what, number one, success isn't. I think about this often when it comes to my law career, that I learned a lot about the type of attorney and the type of leader and the type of boss that I wanted to be by learning the majority of what I didn't want to be and reverse engineering that. And I feel like this is the way that a lot of people approach the idea of success is I don't want to be broke, so success means money. I don't want to be unhealthy, so success means losing weight and eating better. I don't want to be alone, so success means being in a relationship. We spend so much of our time focusing on the things that we don't want to accomplish instead of being able to look at that in the positive and say what it is that we actually do want to be able to accomplish. So I wanted to do this episode because I want to have you guys really step back and think, number one, where am I assuming that the things that I'm seeing in other people are actually true? What's the difference between a belief and a truth, right? What am I just believing because of my own perceptions and my own biases when I look at somebody and I convince myself that they are in a different or better position than I am? Is that actually fact? Am I giving myself all of the credit that I deserve for the things that I've accomplished in any area of my life? And on that same coin, am I giving somebody else too much credit for the things that they've created or haven't created in their life? This comparison game is so dangerous. And it's this double-edged sword because we meet people that show us the way that things can be different than we ever thought before. We meet people that expand our perceptions of what's possible, that show us that life can be something other than what we've created. And that's so incredibly important when it comes to deciding where we want to grow, what we're really willing to settle for or be complacent with, where we want to set more goals, what's that line between being grateful for what we have and also seeking more at the same time. There's people around us that we surround ourselves with that show us all of these things. But when we see them, oftentimes too many people put them up on a pedestal. And then they use, instead of that inspiration for what that person showed you that life could be, we use that pedestal that we've placed them on as a justification for why they can do it and we can't. So I wanted to bring this episode up and have this conversation for multiple reasons. I'd love to encourage anybody that's listening to think about, where are the areas in my life that I have set these unrealistic expectations? What does success mean to me in each area of my life, and why does it mean that? What areas of my life have I discounted my efforts and given other people too much credit? When I think about what other people have that I don't, that makes them more valuable in whatever space I'm comparing myself in, when did I decide that and what was the purpose of it? It's interesting because we often say don't compare yourself to others, never compare yourself to others, but that's not human. It's not a real human thing to ever just take away comparison. I think that the sweet spot is being able to compare ourselves to others in a way that honors what we are capable of, honors what they are capable of, acknowledges the differences that we both bring to the table, instead of believing that one person is better suited at all things in life, right? So specifically where this conversation came from was a recent podcast episode with Lisa Chastain. The podcast is going to be coming out on Monday, where we talked about negative relationships with money. And we talked about the willingness that people have to automatically believe that somebody else has their life more put together than they do. When we look at somebody, we just make assumptions. These assumptions prevent us from making true human connection with people, prevents us from really understanding somebody else's model of the world, because instead of taking the time to step in and understand what their reality really looks like to them and feels like and sounds like, and what they're really thinking in their life, we're too busy filling that time with our assumptions about why they are better off or worse off than we are. And I think that if we're all really honest with ourselves, we do this more often than we'd like to acknowledge. I think we do it in all areas of our life at some point in time or another. The points in time where it seems to be the most impactful are those areas that are highly tied to our values and what we've decided is our worth, right? I don't know about you, but I've definitely made the mistake in the past of tying my self-worth to my net worth, of tying my value to other people, to the amount of money that's in my bank account or the amount of money that I make every year. And that created this incredibly horrific place to live in, because not only was I spending my time wondering whether I felt like somebody else was more capable of doing things than I was, but I was constantly wondering whether or not I was worth being in the conversation with them. And one of the things that really shifted this for me was podcasting. Surprisingly, I used to describe podcasting when I would talk to people about my favorite things about starting it. I would say that one of my favorite things about starting a podcast is that I found myself in conversations with people I had no business being in a conversation with, that I had guests come on my show that I otherwise would never have had the opportunity to have conversations with. And I think that there is a truth to that in one aspect or another. The Les Browns of the world, I think that it's interesting to think of a time that you would have just crossed paths with somebody like Les Brown, unless it was intentional through podcasting. Um, I and intention, I think, is really where that key is at. There's a difference between saying that podcasting has given me an opportunity to have conversations with people that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to have conversations with. That's different than saying it's given me an opportunity to have a conversation with people that I had no business having a conversation with, right? One is a fact and one is a value statement and one is a worth statement. So we often have to ask ourselves, like, when did I decide that? When did I decide that this person was better off than me in the world of money? When did I decide that one of my really good friends was better off than me in building relationships? How does this play into the way that you make decisions in your life, in your business, related to your money, related to your relationships, related to friendships, how you show up in the world? It's always the assumptions that we make about other people, and the assumptions that we make without taking the time to really sit down and ask them and have a conversation and take the time to understand them. Like, think back about this for a little bit. How many times have you been in conversations with somebody where they say something and you're like, holy crap, I feel the same way too. And you were totally shocked that this person that you're having a conversation with could feel the same way that you feel about this particular topic, because you were so sure that they had their shit together. And how different would that a relationship had been from the very start is if instead of assuming that they had their life together and assuming that they had no idea what we were talking about, we had the willingness to have this conversation. This idea is multifaceted, right? Because this idea of shame, this idea of, I don't want to talk about whatever this important topic is to me, because what if they don't relate? We, as humans, find a way to convince ourselves that we live on this stranded island where we're the only ones who have ever experienced our problems. We're the only ones who have ever struggled. We're also the only, but we're not the only ones that have ever succeeded, right? Anybody can succeed, but nobody can struggle like I can. And I don't know why we feel the need to put ourselves in that comparison and that shame game, but I do know it's something that we all do. And I also know that it's something that's tied to the assumptions that we make about other people. And so my purpose of this podcast is to get you to challenge the assumptions that you're making about the people that surround you. Get you to challenge the assumptions that you're making about yourself and your own success, and get you to challenge the assumptions that you make about success. I talk often about our definition of success changing, and it changes all the time. And that's because our values shift and what's important to us shifts, and where we're willing to spend our time and energy changes. Our perception of the world changes. What we think is possible changes. Maybe the willingness to stop making assumptions helps us get to that shift of a definition of success faster. So my challenge to you as you listen to this, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it as it's released as a podcast episode, is really to ask yourself, what does success mean to me? And what's the purpose of me wanting to have it? And what's the purpose of assuming I already don't? Right? I think that last part of it, that the assumptions we make about our capabilities, the capabilities of others, that's the difference between being grateful for what you have and wanting more and chasing things, right? If we constantly feel like, if we're constantly making assumptions that other people have it more together than we are, and that we have to get to a place and we have to accomplish a thing, then we're constantly chasing something instead of acknowledging that there's something that we want. We understand the purpose of what we want it for, and we're willing to challenge the assumptions that we've made about ourselves, about others, and about the world around us. So that's my challenge to you. Challenge your beliefs. Challenge your lack of willingness to have the hard conversations with people because you think you're the only one that has struggled the way that you might be struggling now. Because I promise you, you're not. And I say it with all the love, that if you're struggling with something right now, I promise that somebody else is too. And our unwillingness to talk about that, the moment we bring those walls down and we have that conversation, it just seems to get a little bit easier because we know we're not alone. And success comes easier. Getting it comes faster. And being able to bring other people along the journey becomes a lot more enjoyable. So that's what I got for you today. I look forward to hearing what you think about this topic and digging into it more if you enjoyed it. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the More Than Corporate podcast. If anything that was said during this episode resonated with you or provided value in any way, it would mean the world to me if you would head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the More Than Corporate podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. If you'd also like to connect, I've created a Facebook group that is full of amazing people who also make it their mission to live their best life every single day. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, the name of that Facebook group is Success Center. Head over there, request to join, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.